Welcome to the Mets Pod, presented by Tri-State Cadillac. On today's show, Jacob Wilkins, the voice of the Binghamton Rumble Ponies, joins us. We talk Brandon Sproat and the other promising prospects that he's got to watch all season. As always, we review the week that was up and down for the Mets, debut a new segment with one eye towards the offseason, review our scoreboard predictions, and answer your mailbag questions. So subscribe to the Mets Pod at Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Go watch every episode and leave a comment in the YouTube section as well, or wherever you get your shows. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Mets Pod, presented by Tri-State Cadillac. Visit your Tri-State Cadillac dealer today and subscribe to the Mets Pod at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. If you'd like to drop us a review, drop us a mailbag question with that review. Watch us on YouTube. And of course, ask those questions in the comments under the show there as well. I'm your host, Connor Rogers, joined as always by my co-host, Joe DeMayo. And we're leading things off today with a special edition of Down on the Farm, the voice of the Mets AA affiliate, the Binghamton Rumble Ponies. Jacob Wilkins is here to talk to us about some of the prospects we've been tracking here for a long time. Jacob, we love having you on the show. How are you, man?
Joe, Connor, thanks so much for having me. It's great to be on with you. Always a pleasure.
So I want to start with a little bit of a question that's at the macro level. What are some of the biggest changes in this system you've noticed the last year or two as we've seen this different influx of talent, not only from the draft, but trades and, of course, international signings?
Yeah, so it's fitting. We're actually taping this as we get ready for a day game in Somerset. If we were to backtrack a year ago in Somerset, we had one of the more unique situations you'd see in a minor league baseball setting, in that we had a media day the week after all these trades had happened, where Justin Verlander and Max Scherzer were traded. That brought back Luis Angel Acuna. It brought back Drew Gilbert. In addition, right around the same time, Blade Tidwell was bumped up to us. Jeremiah Jackson, of course, was acquired in the Dominic Leone trade, and Dom Hamel was also starting to get some increased attention. So needless to say, and Tyler Stewart, coming off his incredible beginning to his career in Brooklyn with his incredibly low ERA, was with us. So put all that together, we had 6 players meeting the media. Tim Healy, I think, described it as a major league setting, rarely seen in like a minor league setting. And it really was. We had SNY, of course, there, and tons of attention. And this year, by nature, a few players. Oh, and I'm missing Christian Scott, by the way. I knew someone that was incredibly prominent was in there. So you had C. Scott, who was lighting things up. And this year, obviously, Christian, Dom, and Mike Vasil started the year at AAA, as did Drew Gilbert and Luis Angel Acuna. Tyler Stewart started the year with us, obviously just went to Washington in the trade for Jesse Winker. And so it's a very different feel. You have a new crop of players coming up. And of course, we're just coming off of really the Brandon Sproat experience, if you want to call it that. So that's been the major headline this year. And it's really been nice to see players like JT Schwartz move up to AAA, Trey McLaughlin, who's had a great year as a reliever, and of course Blade pretty early in the season making the move up. So it's a different feel as we're here in Somerset, and it's great for the big club in that they were obviously acquiring talent at the major league level. Certainly there's a human effect at the minor league level to see really good eye character guys like Tyler and Paul Gervais, and of course wish them the best. So there's a different feel in being on that end of it versus last year, where obviously it was a unique situation that brought in such a big haul to us.
So you talk about the Brandon Sproat experience, and he's obviously broken out in a big way this year and recently got promoted to AAA Syracuse. How was it being able to have a front row seat to see all of Brandon Sproat's starts that you got to see this year?
It was incredible. It was 11 starts, but it felt longer in a way, in that it was really cool to get to know him. I think, obviously you see these guys on a day-to-day basis, but I'd say we had 4 in-depth conversations, including right before he went to the Futures game. And the first time I met him, he's a unique cat in the best of ways. He's really well in tune with the mental health side of the game and knowing what he needs to do to be ready for a game, and the growth that he's shown to be able to handle adversity that may come up in a game. But there's a couple of starts that come to mind. Obviously, the last one. What a way to finish out a Double-A career, or at least for now, obviously, in striking out 13, 11 in a row, surpassing a major league record. And Joe and Connor, he made it look easy. It wasn't. It was almost routine. You could tell the New Hampshire players were flailing at pitches and almost there was an apprehension as they got into the box. And 13 of his 15 outs were via the strikeout. Really incredible. Another start that stands out is on July 2nd, I believe I have the date right. Or it might have been June 2nd, actually, because it was right when he got up to us a few starts in. June 2nd against Harrisburg. Sunday night game, second time facing Harrisburg that week. 7 innings, 1 hit. That was the first time. He may have gotten there before, but where we saw him get to 100, striking out a few guys. And you guys know that Nationals prospect system. Those are really good players. Got Brady House on a nasty changeup. Same for Dylan Cruz, who obviously he had faced in the College World Series a year before. So there he ended up allowing just the 1 hit over 7. And the thing is, he's doing it in really tight games. That game was scoreless through 7 innings, but those were 2 starts that stood out, but you could see his consistency. AJ Sager just spoke with Tim Healy for a story in Newsday, and I love the way AJ described his approach. He said to Tim that when they're in hitters meetings, AJ will sort of ask an open-ended question to the pitcher, or pitchers meetings in this case, but looking at the other team's hitters, he'll ask an open-ended question of, what do you see in this, in this lineup? And in a way that only AJ could say, Brandon, gives it his assessment, and AJ looks at his notes with all his years of experience and resources and goes, yeah, that's pretty much what I had. So he is an incredibly intelligent pitcher as well. The last thing, and sorry to be long-winded, guys, here, that stood out is, of course, the futures game. And there's the baseball element in that he had that scoreless inning that really I think he was already on the map, but showcased his abilities to a national audience to face the minimum. And I didn't even realize that he had thrown the 2 fastest pitches, according to MLB.com, in the game at 99.2. The human side, his family, of course, being able to go, growing up learning the game from his dad, and that he always finds him in the stands before the game. And then after the game, David Lennon of Newsday had gotten this quote from Marcelo Meyer, who said, he's what makes a great pitcher because of the off-speed pitches that set up his fastball. And we saw that on Friday. There's an intent in each at-bat. The sequencing is crisp. And the last thing that AJ said in the article that also stood out is sometimes you have to prod guys, hey, even though it's not your start, be in tune with what someone else is throwing or how someone else is handling a lineup. For Brandon, he never had to tell him that. That was intuitive.
Jacob, you've seen plenty of high-end arms come through Binghamton, guys that are already in the majors, have made the majors. You brought up someone like Christian Scott earlier. How does Sproat stack up against the top arms you've seen come through? Like, what level, what caliber of pitcher are we talking about here?
Well, the back end of that question, certainly I think a top shelf as high caliber as you can get. It's hard for me to compare because each pitcher comes in with a different style. It's interesting. Matt Levine, my broadcast partner, and I were talking before Friday, his career high in strikeouts. Granted, this is, by the way, his first season at all of professional baseball, but his career high was 10, which nothing to shrug at, but it wasn't like there was a 17 strikeout game or a 15 strikeout game. But it's the consistency and the way he can dominate within a game, the start to a game. There's an electricity. He's certainly at a different level in the way the way we've heard from scouts or people that he is almost must-see television or became that. I think there's a lot of similarities as well to Christian Scott in that they were a little under the radar, not just the Florida connection, of course, but a little under the radar at the start, but that their process, their sort of lunch pail mentality, the results told the story. It's not flashy. Obviously, with Sproat, it's high velocity. But I see this most similarities, I guess, to Christian And I know Brandon has the utmost respect for Christian as a fellow Gator and, as a friend in the system.
I'm going to put you on the spot here, and there's no fence riding allowed. Does Brandon Sproat make his major league debut in 2024?
Oh, I'm going to ride the fence because I like my bi-weekly paycheck, Joe. And, I don't, I never speculate on that, but I don't think it takes a rocket scientist to see the tea leaves and where things are heading here. Certainly it's exciting to see the Mets in a position where they're competing and going to be playing important games. And I'll say this, I'm sure Brandon can handle that.
So Ryan Clifford for a while was almost impossible to get out after being promoted to Double-A. I mean, Joe and I were laughing for a while because in Brooklyn, and credit to Joe, he was warning everybody. He's like, listen, for a lefty like this, the numbers aren't always going to pop. He gets the call to Binghamton and really takes off offensively. What has stuck out about him, and also something that we never really get to talk about with him, how would you evaluate his defense? All we see is the towering home runs, obviously the ability to get on base, but obviously if he's going to make the major leagues, everybody wants to know what it's going to look like defensively too, whether that's a corner outfield or first base spot.
I think defensively, Connor, he's been fine. I think there's nothing where I say there's a red flag. He's played first, he's played left. It seems pretty seamless. And you know what? To me, when I'm judging defense, yes, there are guys that can make the flashy plays, but I look for the things like, are they handling the 3-1 put out or the 3-6 put out crisply? Are the instincts good on a ball down the line? There's nothing that stands out where I say, oh, that's a problem. Same thing in the outfield in terms of getting reads on the ball. In terms of offense, yeah, it's funny, guys. I was looking back as I was looking at his numbers today. It's like, oh, wow, yeah, he did only hit that one homer at Brooklyn. And that was it's funny the narratives that pop up during the season. And that went away pretty quickly after maybe 1 week to get acclimated here. 3 things that stand out. 2 in-game situations. One is an overarching theme. The overarching theme is the walks. 74 walks at the top of the leaderboard in minor league baseball. That leads to his success because he's not going to be an easy out. He's not going to chase, so he's going to get a pitch that he wants. And his comfort in that has been pretty much from the start. From a game standpoint, some guys have that if factor for coming through in the clutch. 6 RBI game at New Hampshire, including a grand slam and RBI double multi-homer game. And then the Friday night game that got quite a bit of attention here or in Binghamton was the walk-off 2-run homer against Somerset, reached base 4 times. And you just had a feeling that no one was going to get him out. And so you think of, obviously, everyone has the same or close to the same numbers. They know what they're preparing for and facing Clifford, but because he's so selective, he makes for a really tough out. And I think for a guy that's only just turned 21 years old, he's only getting more comfortable as he gets more reps here, just in general, being at the Double-A level.
So one guy that, it's a former first-round pick, so he really shouldn't go under the radar, but Kevin Parada has kind of flown under the radar a bit. And if you go back since June 20th, he's hitting 289. He's got a 393 on base percentage and an 855 OPS. How have you seen his growth this year? Because you obviously got to see him get to Double-A last year, and now this is his first full season with Double-A. How have you seen his growth in 2024?
Glad you asked about him, Joe, because I was going to bring him up as a guy that had sort of flown under the radar, and I agree. It's sort of a hybrid situation in that people obviously know of Kevin. I think he's had a great year. You mentioned those numbers of late. Reached base in 20 straight games, which tied the Eastern League high. Also a guy that can draw a lot of walks. And there's a consistency that I think has grown as the year has come on. Both on and off the field, it again just seems very comfortable, very in command. I think that Kevin's really developed nicely this year. And he's, again, the defense continues to improve. And I think he's sort of become a leader of this team. And obviously everything's fluid in terms of moving parts. But I think that he's a guy that is certainly respected in the clubhouse and that is only going to look back at this year and really be pleased.
Last one for you here, Jacob. We know there was a big adjustment period when he got there, but what did you notice from Nolan McLean as he got more comfortable pitching at that level? It felt like while he doesn't go deep into games, he's been hovering around, 4 innings, and all this is on purpose. We know that. They're not pushing him into the sixth and seventh inning. It feels like it has gotten better over time.
Yeah, I think Nolan's, and there's always one guy that ends up on the short end of the stick, whether it's run support or just games. And, you take wins and losses with a grain of salt. But I know that, when a guy's fighting for that first win, it's a little tough. And I think, it makes it challenging a little bit to assess over in a 5-inning start. But I've walked away from quite a few starts and gone, that was a good start for McLean, and it just didn't end up in the win column. And he's going through a lot of adjustments. As you guys, was it you, Joe, that broke the story with McLean moving to hitting to pitching, and so I think he's getting into a routine. He told me that he's always been comfortable here from the start, so I believe that. I think he came from Oklahoma State. This isn't going to overwhelm him, but. He's in that transition period of being a pitcher full time, professional makeup, goes about his business the right way every day. And the numbers, there's certainly talent there. And he's just a classic development case of getting more reps. And as you guys know, it doesn't always happen. Not everyone's a Brandon Sproat situation. Sometimes it's a slower burn, as they say. And I think Nolan will be just fine.
Be sure to check out Jacob and the Rumble Ponies the next time they are on SNY Friday, August 24th at 6 p.m. against the Reading Fightin' Phils. Jacob, really great stuff, especially on this team that so much talent has come through the system. We love what you do, and we love chatting with you, so thanks again.
Right back at you guys. Thanks as always. Great to be on.
Before we leave the farm, a quick note from Single A. The Brooklyn Cyclones return home this week to take on the Hudson Valley Renegades, affiliate of the New York Yankees, on Thursday, August 8th. The first 1,500 fans will receive a Francisco Alvarez Flex bobblehead. For more information and tickets, visit brooklyncyclones.com. Joe, new segment alert. That's right. We got something cooking here. It's called How to Do a Contract Year, with 3 options that we each have. A is pathway to payday. B, the jury is still out. C, probably should have taken that last contract extension offer, which is the one that nobody wants to hear. Joe, I will give you the floor for our first candidate here, coming off a tremendous start in St. Louis in the makeup game against the Cardinals, a guy that's on a really good run here in Sean Manaea. Joe, which option do you like for Manaea, who, reminder to everybody, Manaea has an opt-out after this year. I know he's technically on a 2-year deal. With the way he's pitched, we would think he's sprinting to press the opt-out button.
He is on a pathway to a payday. He is, as we record right now, 8th in the National League in ERA, and he joined some Mets rarefied air last night. He is one of 3 pitchers in Mets history to, in consecutive starts, go at least 7 innings, allowing 0 runs and striking out at least 10. The list is now Tom Seaver, Dwight Gooden, Sean Manaea. That is the list in Mets history to have accomplished that. The growth he has shown, his sweeper is the most effective pitch in baseball by Baseball Savant StatCast metrics. He's learning to elevate that 4-seam fastball, where early in the season it was a lot more sinkers, but now he's being able to throw up in the zone to generate some swing and misses on the fastball as well. So awesome things from Sean Manaea, really good growth, which is the kind of stuff that we talked about when the Mets signed him, the things that he was growing into as a pitcher. So, unless something goes awry here, he is heading in the direction of, as you said, opting out of that contract and on a pathway to probably a multi-year deal at some pretty good money.
Yeah, this is pathway to payday all day, and it should be from the Mets, Joe. I will take the hard stance on that. I think when you look at Manaea, there's a lot of promising trends here. Is that, one, this is somebody who had a lot of success very quietly in Oakland over the stretch of multiple years, and now the strikeout rate is up. Manaea has found some different things in his game that have made him a better pitcher. He's somebody that this year has been a workhorse. It feels like he's one of the guys on the team that is also a leader, not only with this pitching staff, but with the team as a whole. So Manaea, to me, is somebody that this was a phenomenal deal by David Stearns, getting him in here on what is essentially 1 year of money. We think he's going to opt out where he would make about almost the same. It'd be about $13.5 million next year. He's going to get a raise from that. When you're looking at Manaea, he's someone, you said the multiple years, Joe, and the fact is he'll probably make more per year than that $14 million number. So I think the Mets should do everything they can to retain Manaea. And I'll say this, Joe, if they want to, I'm actually pretty optimistic because it feels like there's a comfort level here with Manaea. We've talked about with players in this organization, what this organization has in terms of pitching development and pitching just behind the scenes. And it feels like Manaea has really, really found a home with the Mets. The next one, and this will be one of the bigger talking points of the winter, Pete Alonso. Joe, I'm going to say this is a B. The jury is still out. But I'll be honest with you, it has been gradually trending towards Pete should have taken whatever the last contract extension offer was. This has not been a good contract year for Pete Alonso. He's never finished a major league season with an OPS under 800. He is under 800 in that category right now. Runners in scoring position, he has been hitting below 200, which is hard to fathom from the Mets cleanup hitter. And the bottom line is, it's not always just about what you've done for me lately with these mammoth franchise player contract extensions. It's how you're going to age. A player that is a right-handed hitting power first baseman on the wrong side of 30. It's not about what this contract will look in year 1 or 2, although this year hasn't been very promising. Last year was just okay. It's year 3, 4, 5, maybe 6, Joe, that could scare some people. Alonso, I'll say this, if you want some optimism as a Mets fan, unfortunately, if he doesn't turn this season around and gets back to the slugger that Pete has always been, he might not be taking a multi-year deal. He might be taking the qualifying offer or a, similar to Sean Manaea, a 2-year deal that's really a 1 year with the opt-out. What do you think, Joe?
If we're going to go based off Joel Sherman's reporting, who I think is usually pretty spot on with this kind of things, this is the only option for C. Probably should have taken that last contract offer. I believe he said it was $158 million and it was over 6. I believe that was the number, something like that. I don't think Pete Alonso is going to be finding that number in free agency unless he has a stark turnaround here in the next 2 months and leads the Mets, deep into the playoffs. And look, he is capable of putting a team on his back and carrying you through stretches where it feels like he homers every other day. That, like, if that started today or tomorrow, I don't think you or I would be like, oh my God, I can't believe that just happened, because it's Pete Alonso. And I think all in all, he's having an okay year. Like, I think people are maybe getting a little extreme on what his year as a whole looks like because of how bad it's been with runners in scoring position. And that makes it kind of stick out a little bit. I don't think Pete's having by any means a great Pete Alonso year, or certainly not the kind of year you would have expected heading into a walk year right after hiring Scott Boras and getting ready for hopefully this big payday. But the way he's played this year, it is looking much more like, probably should have taken that money when it was offered, because like you said, Connor, I don't think he's going to see that type of money this offseason. And it might be a situation, we were texting about this yesterday. Maybe this is a situation where you can get Pete Alonso back on like a Cody Bellinger type of deal. 3 years, slightly inflated AAV. There's an opt-out or 2 in there where if Alonso reestablishes himself, he could go back to the market. And, maybe the Mets will be more amenable to giving him, longer term if he, has that bounce back. So a very complicated situation. And I think this Pete Alonso contract talk isn't going anywhere. And I think it's going to be a conversation that we have potentially deep into January. I don't think he's going to be a quick free agency either.
Back to the starting rotation with Luis Severino. So, Joe, obviously C is out on this one because Sevy was a guy that when he got to the market last winter, he had to take a 1-year deal and reestablish his career in the major leagues as a guy that can make his starts and make them effectively. Now, I think Severino's been really good this year. I don't know if you could just stamp pathway to payday with Severino, because I think teams will always still have some injury concerns. I think there's been some moments this year where I think overall what's interesting to me, throw out, a couple bad starts, which is going to happen to anybody. He's at a 3.93 ERA. He's not striking anyone out, Joe. And those are usually guys, when you get into your 30s, you want that number to be going the right way. We just had this conversation about Manaea, by the way. I like Severino a lot. I would obviously welcome him back, but this isn't pathway to payday. This is the jury is still out because I need to see what this deal looks like, Joe. He's not somebody I would give a 4 or 5 year contract.
Yeah, jury is still out on Severino. Like you said, the strikeout numbers are down, but I almost wonder in watching him pitch if that is somewhat by design, because Severino's also consistently pitching deep in the games,
Fair.
even when he doesn't have his best stuff and he maybe gives up 4 runs, he's getting through 6 innings. He's the kind of guy when I assess like pitch counts in a game, I'm like, if you could be at 60 or below after 4, you're in a good spot. And he is consistently, 45, 50, maybe 55. So he's managed his pitch count well. He's pitching more to contact. I think where the jury is still out here, maybe a little less so about the strikeouts, but like you said, the health concerns. He's been healthy this year. Knock on my fake wood desk that I have here that I won't do because I don't want to ruin the audio. But if I knocked on this wood, he's been healthy this year, and that certainly hasn't been something that Luis Severino has been able to say over the last few years. So jury's still out there. I'm open to a potential Severino reunion. It would have to be the right contract, probably on the shorter term. Connor, put you on the spot. If you could only have one back of Manaea or Severino, who would you rather resign?
It's Manaea, and I don't think twice about it. And I know there's recency bias in that. I think if you asked this question 2 months ago, what would the answer look like?
Yeah.
But I believe in Manaea from a durability standpoint. I believe in the changes he's made. And not that I don't believe in Severino's. I love what Severino has done for this team. I look at it like this, Joe. There's 2 different types of success flyer stories. There's the type that, man, you nailed that evaluation. That 1-year deal as a stopgap was perfect. Don't ask for more. Don't try to take this someplace it doesn't need to go. And then there's the 1-year guys that they showed you that this is not a fluke. This is sustainable, that you should find a way to keep them. Think of the perfect example, and this was one I was dead wrong about, Joe. Dead wrong about. And it's an extreme example. Javi Baez had his most major league productive period, I think, with the Mets after that trade deadline. And a lot of people, like myself, said, man, maybe you should bring Javi Baez back. He has one of the worst contracts in all of baseball. He reverted back to all of his bad habits after getting that contract with the Tigers. Then there are guys, and I'm not saying Severino's going to bomb out wherever he signs like that. I don't believe in that. But I would really bet on Manaea the next 3 years, and I would love to see him be a focal part of the middle of this rotation. What about you?
Yeah, I lean Manaea right now, but I think Severino has a good case. It's just a matter of how much do you believe in the health and where does the contract land from a length perspective. And the other side of the coin of the Javi Baez discussion, Taijuan Walker. It's a guy who came in and was fantastic for the Mets, but you knew this was the time to cut bait. It was probably not going to be sustainable, and he has not had nearly the level of success that he had with the Mets since signing that big money multi-year deal with the Phillies.
Yeah, it's a great call out. Walker, a 5.6 ERA and 10 starts this year. So it's really apt. All right, Joe, the last one I want to throw your way. I think this is honestly the most difficult one. I really do, because it has the Sevy injury history. It has the Manaea aspect of, man, he's been really clutch for this team. And here's the thing he has that nobody else has in Harrison Bader, that he is a Gold Glove caliber center fielder. And those aren't just floating around the major league markets every single year. What the heck do you do with Harrison Bader, Joe?
If there's an option D, there isn't, but if there's an option D of like, this is just, someone that you probably just move on from, I think that's where I would go. Like you said, it is hard to find Gold Glove caliber center fielders, but one thing that Harrison Bader has done this year that he has not historically done is hit right-handed pitching.
Yes.
And I think that's going to lead to Harrison Bader trending towards potentially a 2 to 3 year contract this offseason. I don't think he's going to have to settle for one of these 1-year flyer, plug a hole type contracts. So I have bigger aspirations in my outfield pursuits. I'll keep that name under wraps. No one knows who I'm talking about at all, for sure. But right now, I think Harrison Bader's the kind of guy that's just like, he was perfect for this team in this moment in time. And I think as you move forward, you have Drew Gilbert potentially coming up. You have, Jet Williams potentially coming up, who can profile potentially in center field if you wanted him to. You have that other outfield free agent that I would like to offer lots and lots of money to. I think Bader's one of those guys that it was perfect for the time. And after this year, you probably let him go get a multi-year deal somewhere else.
Joe, let me put a wrap on this segment with this question. Do you think, with how capable of a fourth or fifth outfielder, specifically defensively, but he's got some pop, Tyrone Taylor, who's with the Mets they have control, of Tyrone Taylor's rights for the next 2 years. A lot of people probably don't realize that. If you were able to, in that theory, boost this outfield with an impact bat and know that Taylor can supplement center field with one of the young guys, maybe Nimmo gets some starts in center again. This is how you fill the gaps of losing Bader. Does that give you a little bit more confidence in your point as well?
Yeah, I think so. I think Tyrone Taylor is a picture-perfect fourth, fifth outfielder type of guy. Plays good defense. He has speed, but it's not so much in the stolen base threat. But if he's on base, he's going first to third on a single. Yeah, great athlete. He could really run into one. And, you saw at Yankee Stadium the massive homer that he hit off of Garrett Cole on that upstairs fastball. So Tyrone Taylor, I think, was one of David Stern's best finds. And, I think that allows some flexibility here with Harrison Bader too, where if Harrison Bader wants to sign a 1-year deal to stay with the Mets, I'm probably not going to tell him to go away, but I think his season is going to allow him to get more than that.
All right, Joe, as we always do, let's jump into the week that was. A little bit of up and down. The Mets played a good series against the Twins, and then let's call it what it is, a disappointing stinker against the Angels. I don't know if it was the travel. They started off fine. Blackburn gets the win in his debut, and then the last 2 games ultimately disappointing, especially losing each game by a run in the fashion that they did. And then the Mets beat the Cardinals in the makeup game 6-0, a very reassuring win. So, and overall, we're not used to these. It felt like forever, Joe, this team was playing below 500 and then consistently 500 and then overwhelmingly over 500. And we finally had a comeback down to earth week.
Yeah, the Mets were bound to lose a series at some point. They hadn't lost one in quite a while. It's just unfortunate that it had to be against a team like the Angels, who are obviously not a very good team. But I'll tell you, Connor, you know me. Jeff, our producer, knows me. I might be one of the more even-keeled Mets fans that you can find. I don't tend to get too high, and I don't get too low. I was big mad on Saturday. Saturday's game just got to me. JD hits the grand slam. Yeah. Brazoban, who looked great in his debut, comes in, and I feel great, and obviously gives up the home run there to Zach Neto, and the Mets aren't able to do anything against the volunteer fireman, Ben Joyce, pumping 105, which is crazy. Insanity. But obviously a really tough weekend. But what was really big is because, everyone talks about this crazy travel schedule, right? It's LA, then it's St. Louis for a day, then it's Colorado, then it's Seattle. They needed that game against St. Louis on Monday badly, not just for bouncing back from like the kind of bad vibes that came off of the weekend, but big picture, the Mets now have the tiebreaker over St. Louis, they've fallen off a little bit in the wild card standings, but anytime you can have a tiebreaker over a team, because there's no more game 163, it's just in-season tiebreakers for head-to-head. Anytime you could kind of check a team off that list, that helps your case as you head into the stretch run here. But uneven week and tough weekend in LA, but really big bounce back in that one day in St. Louis.
It's definitely emphasized because it was the Angels, right? This team was due to play a 500 week at some point. You don't want to lose a series to a team like that, especially once again, the fashion that they did. The 2 games they lost by a run in each game.
And they're great in 1-run games. Coming into the weekend, they were 21-10, I think, in 1-run games.
They were.
Which was the best mark in the majors. So tough to lose 2 1-run games against a lesser team when you win a bunch of 1-run games.
And the big issue at the moment is, and I think this will level out eventually, the Diamondbacks and the Padres are both 8-2 in their last 10. They're not losing right now. Now, to be fair, the Padres were all in at the deadline. They paid some enormous, outrageous prices for high-end relief help. The Diamondbacks are getting healthy. Corbin Carroll, since the calendar turned to July, is looking like Corbin Carroll. He had a dreadful first half of the season. So those teams are going to be a problem. And I don't think they're going to play, 800 level baseball for the rest of the season. But it also goes to show you that the margin for error for the Mets is also going to be a little slim, depending on, more importantly, now you look at how well the Diamondbacks and the Diamondbacks and the Padres have played. The Braves are what seemed like a big wild card lead once upon a time. They've been caught up by everybody just about. So how this thing shakes out, and you said it, Joe, kind of not going to write the Cardinals off, of course, but taking the season series against them is big. Try to get as many teams out of the picture with you as possible, especially if it comes down to a tie. That was really, really big for the Mets, and we'll see where it goes from here, of course, against Colorado, which is going to be huge. You're listening to the Mets Pod presented by Tri-State Cadillac. Subscribe to the Mets Pod at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SNY's YouTube channel, or wherever you get your shows. All right, Joe, let's review our scoreboard predictions from last week, and then, of course, we'll make new ones. Going into the week, you were up 39-32. So I'd finally won a week, but you still have a good lead here. So the first one was yes or no, will Jesse Winker hit at least a home run? We both said yes. He ultimately did not, so no points there. Over-under push was at 5 for Jose Butto innings. We both went under. We both got a point. Yes or no, this was the parlay, Joe. Will Paul Blackburn pitch and get his first Mets win? You went yes, I went no, and you got the point. Blackburn gets a win in his Mets debut. Over-under push was set at 1 for Pete Alonso home runs. We went over. Pete only hit 1 home run, no points. Over-under push was at 1 for Francisco Lindor home runs. We pushed. He did not hit a home run. Over push was at 2 for Mets starters going at least 6 innings. Joe, you pushed. I went over. The Mets had 4 starters hit this mark, so I get the point. Over-under push was at 4 for Mets wins. We both pushed, which is wild because it feels like this absolutely should have been a hit when you look at those 2 Angels losses. One of them should have been a win. The Mets won 3 games, not 4, no points awarded. We finished the week each with 2 points. You keep your lead for the season, 41-34. This week, 6 games, 3 against the Rockies, 3 against the Mariners. Heavy home run flavor this week, of course, with the Mets playing 3 games at Coors Field. Yes or no? Will Jesse Winker hit at least 1 home run? Joe, you have the season lead, so I'll give you the first choice here.
I'm going to say no, but I think Jesse Winker obviously hasn't come out the gates flying as a Met, thus far in just, his few appearances. But I like the way he works counts, and, I think he's putting together some professional at-bats. But I'll say no on the home run, and be perfectly happy to be wrong.
I'm going to take the yes here. Number 1, I have a lot of ground to make up. 2, it's interesting how they're using Winker right now when they play him, which is only going to be against righties and not always against righties. They put a defensive replacement out for him pretty quickly, Joe. So 6 games, he's not guaranteed to be in the lineup for every game, and he's not guaranteed to stay in the lineup throughout the game, or he's almost guaranteed to not stay in the lineup. So the at-bats are limited. But I do like that he's got Coors Field here. He is due for 1. Let's see what he could do. I'll go with yes. Over-under push was at 1 for JD Martinez home runs. I will go with the under, Joe. I don't think Martinez hits a home run this week. Where are you at?
I'll push. I think, obviously the Grand Slam was huge in LA, and it seems like JD went into a funk for a bit. Seems like he's working his way kind of back out of it. And man, it's going to be tough to do a lot of unders on home runs hit when they're playing 3 games in Colorado, but I'll push on this one.
I know Martinez has had such an interesting season when you look at just how it's gone in terms of, time periods. Like you look at the month breakdown, obviously he was only here for 5 games in April, March, but then you had May where he started to turn it on. He had an 828 OPS. He hit 5 home runs. June, he hit 4 home runs. He had an 874 OPS. And then July, he wasn't hitting for power at all. His OPS was under 700. And it's early in August, but it's been a little bit much of the same there. So it's going to be interesting to see how the ebbs and flows go for a veteran player like Martinez, especially as they try to get him more rest. But the next one here, this one, I can't believe we're at the conversation of this, but he's just been on fire. Over-under pushes at 1 for Jeff McNeil home runs, Joe.
Man, I love everything Jeff McNeil's doing right now. Obviously, the numbers are there, but his approach at the plate is so much better than it was. I mean, he early in the season, it was like he was trying to slap singles through the hole and trying to play that game. And I think he finally realized just try to hit the crap out of the ball, and sometimes it's going to go your way. And it's obviously been a lot better for him. With that said, I will go under on home runs, but I feel really good about where Jeff McNeil is as a hitter right now.
I'm going to push here. I'm going to say McNeil gets one. He's just been on fire. I mean, he's hit a ton of home runs since the break. You like the matchup. You like the landing spot. He's playing a lot again. I'll go with the home run for McNeil, so I will take the push. Over-under pushes at 2 for Pete Alonso home runs. Joe, I'm going to go under here. I mean, that gives you a little bit of a cushion. Even if he hits one, that still hits the under. If Pete's going to get hot, like we've been saying all year, it's got to be this week at Coors Field. You would think this is the place to do it. And it would be ironic if it continues in Seattle, because Seattle was the team everybody thought would make calls for Pete at the deadline if the Mets were sellers, which they were not. I will take the under with Pete. I've been burned by the over with him way too many times, Joe.
I feel like every week this conversation this is the week that Pete Alonso has to break out.
I'm done doing it.
Yeah, I'm not going to go over, but I will push. I'll say he hits 2 home runs this week.
All right, Francisco Lindor is also set at 2 for home runs this week. Lindor did not hit one last week. He is a guy that gets a little streaky. What do you like here, Joe?
I'm going to push. I think Lindor, like you said, he's having great at-bats. He is such a consistent hitter ever since, we just go back to that mid-May. He has been so consistent, and he just didn't hit a home run last week. That kind of is what it is. I think he has a couple in him this week.
Yeah, I mean, the bottom line is Lindor has just been MVP level while leading off this year. His OPS is almost at 900. He's getting on base at a 370 clip while batting leadoff. And he's still hitting home runs because he's just such a great hitter, but he's not trying to hit home runs. I'm going to push here. I think Lindor, he's a guy that when he hits him, it just the ball starts to go. And honestly, let's not forget, he had one taken away not that long ago as well. That was opposite field. So Lindor is a guy, I think he can get to that 2 mark this week. All right. One of our favorite ones, Joe. Over-under pushes at 3 for Mets starters going at least 6 innings. I am going to push and say half of them do this week, Joe.
I'm going to go over. I think I've been the over guy on the Mets starters going at least 6 innings. And
you didn't last week, and it burned
I went away. It burned me, so I'm going back. I'm coming back to the well. I'm going over 4 out of 6.
All right, over-under push for Mets wins, Joe. The number is once again set at 4.
I'm gonna push. I think that seems like a good number. I think there's a chance of a sweep here in Colorado, obviously, with that level of team, though, as rough as teams are, it's really hard to bank on a sweep. And I think often fans will just say, you have to sweep the bad teams. If they could pull off 2 out of 3 and 2 out of 3, especially with the way Seattle's pitching is set up, I think that would be a good week for the Mets. So I'll go push at 4.
Yeah, I'm with you again. I go push on the starters going at least 6 innings, push on the Mets wins. I'm side by side with you there. I think this is a team that they're going to play around of, taking 4 out of 6, taking series, chipping away at series. I think assuming sweeps is a very, very dangerous game. But at the end of the day, the Mets should handle business against both of these teams. All right, let's jump into our mailbag questions to close out today's show. The first one from Terrence Durning. Thank you for the 5-star review on Apple Podcast, Terrence. I'm going out to Syracuse to watch the Mets take on the Worcester Red Sox. I'm looking forward to seeing Gilbert, Acuna, Beatty, and Ritter. Probably no shot to see Sproat as he pitched on Friday, but what other players should I keep my eyes on, or any interesting prospects on the Worcester Sox?
Worcester. So
Worcester.
Worcester.
I said it like the sauce.
Yeah, exactly. But the Worcester Sox, the Woo Sox, as they like to call themselves, I don't know the pitching schedule for the week. Syracuse, for whatever reason, doesn't list their starters on like MILB, so I have to actually ask to find out who's pitching what day. Sproat, like you said, pitched on Friday. That should line up the pitch sometime this week. So I don't think he said what day that Terrence is going to the game, but I guess stay tuned to my Twitter. I'll see if I could find out what day Sproat is pitching, and maybe that'll help dictate kind of which game you go to. But he listed the prospects. I mean, Drew Gilbert, Luisangel Acuna missed a few games with a sore foot. I expect him back in game action this week. Don't know if that's today or later in the week, but he should be back soon. Beatty, of course. Luke Ritter has had a fantastic season for AAA. And Mike Vasil and Dom Hamel are a couple prospects that are in the rotation there. And Vasil's starting to come on a little bit. I mean, AAA has been a huge adjustment. We're going to get into them right after this, but you might be able to see either Vasil or Hamel pitch, potentially Sproat. But I think from a prospect standpoint, I think you about hit the ones you're going to want to see, Terrence.
The Worcester Red Sox. You truly learn something new every single show about these minor league team names. All right. Next one, Jesse Weinstein, 7038. This one was from YouTube. Thank you, Jesse. I have a AAA pitching question. Hamel and Vasil have been in AAA for about 20 starts now, and both seem to be struggling. Both are older prospects. What gives? And at what point do the Mets try converting them to relievers? So, Joe, this is an interesting question to me because Dom Hamel was a reliever converted to starter. At what point, do you start to revert back to, hey, this just didn't work out for us?
I think Hamel could definitely. I think he profiles more of a future reliever than Vasil does. Like if Vasil is a future reliever, I think it's more of like a swingman kind of guy. Hamel is the type that I think you could get into those 1 to 2 inning type of outings. Big time stuff. I know the results obviously in AAA haven't been great for either of them. Hamel has had some really good starts and some really tough starts. It hasn't been a lot of just okay. It's either been kind of really good or really rough. And Vasil's turning it on a bit of late. His last start wasn't awesome, but he's been pitching much better. So there's still, I think, some hope there on Vasil to have, a back end type of starter, swingman type of role. But a guy like Hamel, the control comes and goes. But from a pure stuff standpoint, if you could trim him down to, 1 to 2 innings, maybe you're getting up to 97 on the fastball. He's got 2 distinct breaking balls with legitimate, 2,500 up to 3,000 RPM. So he really can spin the baseball. He's worked hard on a cutter. So I think Hamel could potentially have a future in the bullpen. And, that's something even back when the Mets drafted him, I had written in some of my write-ups about, him and then everyone in the system. I've always mentioned that he has that floor of being a reliever. And the closer you get to the major leagues and not being able to sustain it as a starter at the AAA level, I think that just makes it become more and more of a possibility.
Yeah, Hamel walking 5.5 batters over 9 innings, Joe. I mean, you nailed it. Yeah. It's just that the control is obviously an issue right now and something that these guys can work on. But the bottom line is they're getting passed in the system. I mean, we've talked about Sproat just flying through the system. Obviously, Christian Scott passed them this year. It'll be really interesting to keep an eye on them because young pitching depth is something you never want to give up on. And obviously, this team is committed to making it work with those guys in one kind of role or the other. This is the Mets Pod presented by Tri-State Cadillac. Visit your Tri-State Cadillac dealer today. Joe, before we sign off, I haven't done this in a while. Any closing thoughts in the thick of this wild card race that has gotten really interesting over the last 2 weeks?
Take care of business against the teams you're supposed to take care of business against. That's especially Colorado. Seattle is a good baseball team. They added at the deadline with Arozarena, and Justin Turner's been pretty good since he went over there. So just take care of business this week and get ready because you mentioned San Diego and Arizona. Not too long from now, the Mets have a 7-game stretch against Arizona and San Diego on the road. So that's not necessarily for this week, but just keep it on the radar because we're going to be talking about that here pretty soon, and that might prove to be a very important stretch. But win every game you can right now and control what you can control. And you can't control if Arizona beats somebody else. You can only control who you beat.
Remember to subscribe to the show at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Leave us a review with a question, and we'll look for it for a future mailbag. Thank you, as always, this week to Terrence for the 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. We really appreciate those. Of course, you can watch every episode on SNY's YouTube channel. Become a subscriber over there as well. Thanks so much, everybody. Catch you next week.